It was just over 2 months ago when Obama took to the podium and infamously said this about the CIA's use of enhanced interrogation techniques following 9/11.
Even before I came into office, I was very clear that in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks.
Now, understandably, many people were outraged over the folksy way the president describes something as serious as the systematic torture and abuse of prisoners of war. What most of the media completely missed in the aftermath of Folkgate was what Obama said just seconds later. And just to clarify, the folks he's talking about here are those that approved and committed said torture.
It's important for us not to feel too sanctimonious in retrospect about the tough job that those folks had. And a lot of those folks were working hard under enormous pressure and are real patriots.
Yes, apparently demanding accountability for the individuals that blatantly violated international law and the Geneva Conventions to ensure that something like that will never happen again makes you a sanctimonious fool. When you think of Obama's record on the issue since he took office, the outlook makes perfect sense. See, while it's true that one of his first actions as president was to sign an executive order banning the use of torture, he's consistently employed a look-forward, not backward approach to investigating and prosecuting the crimes that took place during the Bush administration. In fact, the White House is so eager to do everything in its power to suppress the details of the secret CIA torture program that it's still embroiled in a censorship battle with the Senate over publicly releasing a 6,000-page torture report over 6 months after it was approved for release by the Intelligence Committee. But redacting the Senate report is just the beginning when it comes to apologizing for the Bush administration. In fact, the White House is currently in the middle of a legal battle over the release of never-before-seen photos from the horrific Abu Ghraib prison scandal. According to the ACLU, which sued to have these photos published 10 years ago, the government is holding back as many as 2,100 never-released images from Abu Ghraib and other detention centers overseas. As per usual, the government has cited national security concerns as the reason these photos cannot be released. But of course, given the international outcry and mass condemnation of the Defense Department over the photos that came out in 2004 featuring hooded prisoners being electrocuted, desecrated, and sexually humiliated, it's pretty clear what the real motivations are behind this overt censorship of what we can only imagine is documentation of even more horrific crimes. Thankfully, back in August, a district court judge ruled that the new photos must be made public unless the government can prove that each individual image will impact national security. And just today, the government was given until mid-December to prove its case. What's most shocking about the suppression of this damning evidence is that none of these abuses even took place under Obama's watch, begging the question as to why the White House is going to such great lengths to sweep these atrocities under the rug. But perhaps it's because in many ways, Bush administration policies have only continued or been exacerbated under Obama. Consider that the tactic of rendition, or capturing terrorism suspects and interrogating them at secret sites in other countries without due process, is still widely accepted as a legitimate counterterrorism tool. Look no further than a case involving 3 European men that were secretly captured in Djibouti for their alleged ties to the Islamic militia group Al-Shabaab, and then magically turned up in a U.S. courtroom 4 months later. But even more disturbing than a president who embraces rendition is the fact that top government officials are currently considering whether to apply Bush-era insanity to international torture treaties. According to a New York Times report published over the weekend, lawyers within the White House's National Security Council are debating whether or not the UN Convention Against Torture applies to prisons that are established in other countries. You heard that right. There's an actual debate going on in 2014 over whether or not torturing prisoners at offshore sites is legal. Because apparently not torturing people might impact current or future wartime operations, or God forbid, allow the torture victims to sue the government. So I guess the biggest scandal is not that we tortured some folks, is that we're deciding whether or not to torture them all over again.